World News program coming to you live from Algiers with Miriam Zan to the headlines. In Gaza, widespread public rejection of the occupation of Gaza City and of displacement plans. The United Nations warns that Israel's decision will lead to mass killings, while UNRWA stresses that the new military operation amounts to a death sentence for hundreds of sick and starving children. Coming up next, in Algeria, responding to the French statement about suspending the 2013 visa exemption agreement, Algeria says the French version is a false claim, adding that France's bad faith in the matter is evident. It reaffirmed that for Algeria, the agreement is a definitively closed file. And on Ukraine war negotiations, Russia reiterates its support for security guarantees for Kiev, based solely on the Istanbul agreements. Zelensky says Moscow does not appear ready for serious negotiations, while Washington calls on Europe to shoulder the greater share of the burden for security guarantees. Hello and welcome back to your nightly news. First in our file, 51 Palestinians were killed, including at least 11 people seeking humanitarian aid in heavy Israeli airstrikes, targeting multiple areas and neighborhoods across the Gaza Strip since dawn on Thursday. Palestinian media reported dozens of civilian deaths in Gaza after Israeli drone strikes targeted groups of people in Khan Yunis, Gaza City, and Jabalia, including areas near an aid center Salah ad-Din Street. And hundreds of Palestinians across Gaza protested Israeli plans to forcibly displace residents as the occupation of Gaza City begins. And the demonstrations organized by unions and civil society groups urged the international community to stop Israel's assault amid worsening humanitarian conditions.
This is a clear message. Words are finished, and the time has come for action to stop the military operations, to stop the genocide against our people, and to stop the massacres that are taking place daily.
Today, we gather with all components of the Palestinian people in Gaza to send a message to the whole world that we do not want this war. We do not want the massacres. We want to live and to be safe.
The UN Human Rights Office warned that Israel's decision to take full control of Gaza City and forcibly displace its residents will result in mass killings of civilians, the destruction of life-sustaining infrastructure, and a repeat of the warfare methods used in northern Gaza and Rafah. In a statement, the office stressed that this forced displacement does not meet international legal requirements, urging the signatories to the Geneva Conventions to exert maximum pressure for an immediate halt to the operation, which threatens an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza following Israel's announcement of concrete steps to seize Gaza City. Speaking at the African Development Conference in Japan, Guterres urged Israel to reverse its decision to expand settlements, which he described as illegal in the West Bank. The International Committee of the Red Cross warned that Israel's planned military operations in Gaza City could trigger an even deeper humanitarian catastrophe. ICRC spokesperson in Gaza, Hisham Hanni, said in a press statement that Israeli restrictions are preventing civilians from accessing food, clean water, and healthcare. He called for safe humanitarian access and noted that Israel has blocked medical teams from rescuing the wounded, forcing some Palestinian families to bury their dead inside the ruins of their destroyed homes. And UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini warned that malnourished children in Gaza could die unless urgent measures are taken in response to Israel's military operation on Gaza City. At a press conference in Geneva on Thursday, Lazzarini revealed that UNRWA data show a six-fold increase since March in the number of children suffering from malnutrition in Gaza City.
We have a population that is extremely weak, that will be confronted with a new major military operation. We thought we had already said everything when it comes to Gaza. We had described Gaza as hell on earth. But yes, if this scenario comes true, even if we talk about the evacuation of people in Gaza towards the south, many will simply not have the strength to undergo a new displacement.
And the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, said the latest assault shows contempt for mediators' efforts to reach a ceasefire and a prisoner exchange. In a statement Thursday, the movement stressed that the occupation's announcement of what it calls Operation Guidance Chariots 2 is a continuation of the genocide that has been ongoing for more than 22 months.
The occupation forces announcement of the launch of Operation Gideon's Chariots 2 is yet another act of escalation in the ongoing genocide that has continued for more than 22 months. This new aggression reflects total disregard for the efforts of mediators seeking to achieve a ceasefire and a prison exchange. Operation Gideon's Chariots 2 will fail just as its predecessors did, and the occupation of Gaza will not be a walkover. We call on mediators to exert maximum pressure on the occupation to end the genocide and starvation inflicted on our people. We hold the occupation and the U.S. administration fully responsible for the consequences of this aggression and the destruction of the foundations of life in Gaza.
In Saraya al-Quds, the armed wing of the Islamic Jihad movement released footage that showed a joint ambush with Al-Qassam brigades targeting Israeli military vehicles with explosives and anti-tank shells east of الشجاعية in Gaza City.
ونصرة لدينك ورفعة لرايتك يا رب سهل أمرنا يا الله سهل عملنا هذا يا الله يا رب يا رب. الطيران فوقنا واليهود أمامنا الآليات ونحن الحمد لله تخطينا كل هذا بمعية الله وها نحن الآن نجهز في عبوة ثانية في هذه الرمال الطاهرة تكون وبال عليهم يا الله. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. تم تفجير دبابة. الله أكبر. الدبابة الثانية. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. عمر لك يا بطل. الحمد لله رب العالمين. تم استهداف الأمنيات والخروج وتم تفجير العبوات. الله أكبر. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. الحمد لله رب العالمين. آلية مركبة الحمد لله رب العالمين بالبرج والحمد لله تم تفجير العبوتين بإذن الله تعالى وانسحابنا بسلام مع إخواننا في كتاب القسام.
Britain, Germany and Spain have strongly condemned Israel's approval of the controversial E1 settlement plan, describing it as a violation of international law that undermines the two-state solution. The UK summoned the Israeli ambassador in London to protest the move, warning that it fragments Palestinian territory and entrenches divisions in the West Bank. Germany's foreign minister also urged Israel to halt settlement activity immediately, stressing that Palestinians have the right to live securely and with dignity on their land. Spain likewise rejected the decision, saying it would divide Palestinian areas and block peace efforts, while also calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, humanitarian aid delivery, hostage releases, and renewed commitment to a two-state solution. It's also worth mentioning that 21 countries signed the statement that rejects the Israeli settlement plan. The A3+ group at the Security Council, comprising Algeria, Somalia, Sierra Leone, and Guyana, reiterated its rejection and condemnation of Israel's repeated violations in Syrian territory. During Thursday's council session on Syria, Algeria's permanent representative to the UN, Ahmad Benjama, stressed that Israeli attacks violate Syria's sovereignty and destabilize the entire region, affirming the group's support for Syria's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity.
We must be clear in rejecting external interference that exacerbates instability in Syria. The A3+ reiterates its strong condemnation of Israel's repeated military action in Syria. Such actions flagrantly violate Syria's sovereignty. The 1974 disengagement agreement, international law, and the UN Charter, ultimately. They only serve to aggravate tensions and further destabilize the region. The A3+ reaffirms its unwavering support for Syria's sovereignty, unity, independence, and territorial integrity.
Benjama also voiced concern over the fragile security situation in the country, calling for justice and accountability for crimes committed in recent years.
The A3+ remains gravely concerned about the overall situation in Syria, which continues to be marked by fragility and volatility. After more than a decade of conflict, the Syrian people still face violence, insecurity, and humanitarian deprivation on an unbearable scale. We take note with deep concern of the recent report of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry, which documented grave violations against civilians in the coastal region earlier this year. These horrific findings remind us of the urgency of ensuring justice and accountability. Perpetrators of such crimes must not be allowed to act with impunity. Failure to do so will only deepen the suffering of the Syrian people, hinder recovery efforts, and fuel further instability in the country. We also warn against the danger of this tragic pattern of violence spreading to other regions in Syria.
The Algerian news agency APS, citing a source in the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, reported that the notice published in the official journal of the French Republic regarding the suspension of the 2013 Algerian-French government agreement on visa exemptions for holders of diplomatic and service passports is nothing but a false claim. The agency added that the French notice alleged Algeria had ceased applying the agreement's provisions as of May 11, 2025. However, the foreign ministry source stressed that it was, in fact, the French side that imposed restrictive measures on the entry of Algerian citizens holding diplomatic and service passports into French territory last February, measure that Algeria had already denounced at the time through an official statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
The claims in the French statement are false. The entry restrictions on Algerian citizens holding diplomatic and service passports were in fact imposed by the French side itself back in February. These measures were denounced in an official statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on February 26, 2025. The first case of refusal of entry to France for an Algerian diplomatic passport holder was recorded on February 13, followed by a second on February 26, as noted in the ministry statement at the time. Both cases were subject to official requests for clarification sent to the French authorities.
The same source further emphasized that France's bad faith in this matter is evident, noting that it is Paris that bears responsibility for the initial breach of the agreement's provisions.
The French side's bad faith is evident in this matter, as it was the one that first violated the terms of the agreement. Algeria's response was limited to applying equivalent measures, strictly within the framework of the principle of reciprocity.
The source also underscored that for Algeria, the 2013 Algerian-French agreement is considered definitively closed.
For Algeria, this file is considered closed, once and for all, following its notification to the French side on August 7 of its decision to terminate the 2013 Algerian-French agreement on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and service passports.
The African Union's Peace and Security Council, chaired this month by Algeria, adopted a plan to better integrate Africa's security and governance structures. The move seeks to align initiatives on human rights, democracy, conflict resolution, and early warning with the AU's Agenda 2063 goals. Algeria reaffirmed its commitment to the UN counterterrorism strategy, pledging to share its expertise in supporting global efforts. At a Security Council session, its representatives stressed that tackling terrorism requires a balanced approach between security and sustainable development within a comprehensive and coordinated framework.
Algeria reaffirms its firm commitment to implementing the United Nations Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy and the relevant Security Council resolutions, while expressing readiness to share its experience and support initiatives aimed at eliminating the terrorist threat. Confronting this challenge, Algeria stresses requires a comprehensive and fully coordinated approach built on 6 main pillars. First, addressing root causes by combining security measures with development initiatives and by providing real opportunities for all segments of society, thus depriving terrorism of any fertile ground in which to thrive.
And Algeria further stressed the need to address technological challenges in combating terrorism, highlighting the importance of cutting off terror financing and strengthening cooperation with regional organizations.
Drying up the sources of terrorist financing. For terrorist groups, money remains one of the most important tools for recruiting and sustaining the threats. In this regard, Algeria underlines the crucial importance of its guidelines in strengthening existing frameworks to prevent, detect, and disrupt the use of new and emerging financial technologies for terrorist purposes.
And Sahara President and Polisario Front leader Brahim Ghali, in a message to UN Chief Antonio Guterres, said the UN's 80th anniversary is an occasion to reaffirm its founding principles. He stressed that the 1988 UN-OAU settlement plan, accepted by both the Polisario Front and Morocco and endorsed by the Security Council, remains the only mutually agreed framework for a peaceful and just decolonization of Western Sahara.
This year, the United Nations marks its 18th anniversary, an occasion to reaffirm commitment to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, and to highlight the central role of the United Nations as the cornerstone of multilateralism and the guarantor of the international peace and security. The Joint Settlement Plan of the United Nations and the Organization of African Unity, accepted by both parties, the Polisario Front and Morocco in 1988, and unanimously endorsed by the Security Council in Resolution 658/1990 and 690/1991, remains the only mutually agreed framework. It is practical, reasonable, and provides the path to a peaceful, just, and lasting solution to complete the decolonization of Western Sahara.
Ghali reiterated Polisario's readiness to enter into direct, credible, and good faith negotiations with Morocco without preconditions or imposed terms under UN auspices.
The Polisario Front has repeatedly demonstrated through concrete actions its genuine commitment to achieving a just and lasting peace. It remains ready to work with the United Nations and the African Union to secure a peaceful, fair, and lasting solution to end colonialism in Western Sahara. In this regard, the Polisario Front reaffirms its full readiness to engage with Morocco in direct, serious, credible negotiations conducted in good faith, without preconditions or diktats, under the auspices of the United Nations. The objective remains a peaceful, just, and lasting resolution in line with UN and African Union decisions and the principles of the international law.
The A3+ group has renewed its call for a credible Libyan-led and Libyan-owned political process that leads to the holding of fair and free national elections and the unification of Libya's state institutions. Algeria's permanent representative to the UN, Ammar Ben Jama, speaking on behalf of the A3+ group, said in a UN Security Council session held Thursday to discuss the situation in Libya that a political solution will remain out of reach as long as foreign powers continue to interfere in Libyan affairs.
Political solution in Libya will remain elusive as long as foreign power continue to use this country as a theater for proxy conflict and interfere in the national political process. We align ourselves with the communique issued by the African Peace and Security Council on July 24th, calling for the immediate and unconditional withdrawal of all foreign forces, all foreign fighters, and all mercenaries from Libyan territories. Libya's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity must be respected.
UN Special Representative Hannah Tete has outlined a roadmap to end Libya's crisis. In a briefing to the Security Council on Thursday, she said the plan rests on three pillars: a viable electoral framework, institutional unification through a single government, and inclusive dialogue. She urged support for efforts to strengthen governance and unify Libya's key institutions.
We propose a roadmap built around three core pillars. One, the implementation of a technically sound and politically viable electoral framework aimed at holding presidential and legislative elections. Two, unifying institutions through a new unified government. And three, a structured dialogue that enables broad participation of Libyans to address the critical issues that need to be tackled in order to create a conducive environment for elections, shaping a shared vision and addressing long-term drivers of conflict, while underpinning short-term efforts to unify institutions and enhance governance in key sectors.
Stephanie Khouri, Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General for Political Affairs in UNSMIL, or UNSMIL, called for dialogue to resolve outstanding issues and for restraint from violence in Tripoli. She revealed that over the past 2 days, she had held a series of meetings with several security actors, focusing discussions on the current security situation in the capital, and the political process facilitated by the mission ahead of Tete's expected briefing to the Security Council. To other developments in other news, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow supports the principle of security guarantees under the 2022 Istanbul agreements, adding that all other options are hopeless from Russia's perspective. Lavrov stressed that the presence of any foreign forces in Ukraine is unacceptable for Moscow. He also criticized Kiev, accusing it of undermining US President Donald Trump's efforts to secure a settlement to the conflict.
Russia has consistently pursued the path of honest and frank dialogue with Ukraine. We reaffirm our firm commitment to the security guarantees that were agreed upon. I stress here that they were proposed by the Ukrainian delegation itself during the Istanbul talks in April 2022. These guarantees have our full support, and as our president has stated repeatedly, is fully prepared to meet, including with Mr. Zelensky, provided that all issues requiring consideration at the highest level have been carefully prepared and discussed.
Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev firmly rejected any proposals for NATO peacekeeping forces in Ukraine. He said that Moscow would not accept NATO troops as a form of security guarantee for Kiev, arguing they cannot play the role of peacekeepers in the region. Medvedev also lashed out at France, calling President Emmanuel Macron a reckless rooster, still dreaming of sending forces to Ukraine, and reiterated Moscow's categorical rejection of the idea. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said 15 people were injured in a Russian strike on an American-owned civilian facility in Zakarpattia region. He noted that Moscow has shown no sign of engaging in serious negotiations to end the war and called for tougher sanctions and tariffs against Russia. And earlier, Zelensky said he expects a strong response from the United States if Russian President Vladimir Putin refuses to hold a bilateral meeting, speaking to reporters in Kiev. He added it is unclear what territorial concessions Moscow might consider, describing Budapest as a potential venue for talks. He said he may meet Putin, but only after Ukraine secures security guarantees. And U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance urged European Union countries to take on a greater share of responsibility for providing security guarantees to Ukraine. In an interview with Fox News, Vance insisted Europe must play a leading role in ending the war, saying that the United States cannot continue to bear the heaviest burden.
But I think the president's preference and my preference would be, let's have them meet regardless. You don't have to figure out every issue. And sometimes leaders sitting down face to face can break the logjam that their teams don't necessarily have the ability to do. There really are two big questions lingering out there. And in some ways it's very simple, but in some ways it's very complicated. Number one is Ukraine wants to know that it's not going to get invaded again by Russia. It wants to know that it's got territorial integrity long into the future. The Russians want certain pieces of territory, most of which they've occupied, but some of which they haven't. So that is really where the meat of the negotiation is. The Ukrainians want security guarantees. The Russians want a certain amount of territory. Again, we finally got the details. We're working on them, but we haven't figured everything out. And I don't think that we should force, we shouldn't say that they can't sit down until you've figured out every little detail. Sometimes them sitting down is what facilitates figuring out those details.
And Chinese Foreign Ministry said Wednesday that China and India have agreed to boost cooperation across multiple sectors. The ministry added that the two countries intend to bring greater benefits to their populations and contribute to human progress.
During the visit, the two sides agreed to restart dialogue mechanisms in various fields, deepen mutually beneficial cooperation, uphold multilateralism, jointly address global challenges, and oppose unilateral bullying. On the boundary question, the two sides reached new consensus on carrying out normalized management and control, maintaining peace and tranquility in border areas, properly handling sensitive points, and launching boundary demarcation negotiations in sections where conditions are ripe.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for tonight's program. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.